Welcome to the Esoerotic Dark Feminine Magic podcast. My name is Crimson, creatrix of Esoeroticism, and I help mystically minded folks awaken their dark feminine magic. Welcome to the Portal of Enchantment. Welcome to our April Ramblings and Musings. So, this is a monthly recording where I literally prepare nothing and just rant like a crazy person to the into the screen, into the void, and maybe people find it of interest. And so, something that I've been reflecting what I want to talk about, and something that has kind of been on my heart for a while now is talking about my engagement with magic and witchcraft and what magic and witchcraft is and what it isn't, and maybe some things that I don't agree about within the communities and the cultures of them. And so that I think is going to make for a fun ramble today, a little musing, if you will. So yes, I identify as a witch, and I also identify as a magician, someone who does magic. So before we even go deeper, I want to say people get doctorates on this shit. Theologians will write volumes on what it means to engage and to identify as a witch, as a magician within the spiritual realm, how it entwines with shamanism and other religious practices. And so, for all intents and purposes, I don't have a doctorate in this. And so, this is my personal experience. This is my belief on how I engage with these practices. But of course, don't let me be your only source. However, I have been doing this work for a while, and I think it's a worthy discussion to have, because why I have been drawn to magic and witchcraft is my aversion to dogma. My aversion to any kind of religious or spiritual practice that tells you you have to believe this. This is our unified belief system, and you must practice in this way, and this is the result of your work, and blind faith. And just, I was raised Catholic, hence why I love incense and candles and ceremony. And so don't throw the baby out with the bath water. But over time I realized, ooh, this is like very limiting. I don't think this is like my full spiritual spectrum of belief. And so I started dabbling in magic and witchcraft and figuring it out. And I was not raised, I am not, and this is one thing right away. Oh, well, you have to be a lineage witch or practitioner to claim the title. That's not true. um, hey, let's start off by saying the big thing, which is there is no grand council of witches who get to decide what you believe, what it is to be a witch, if you can claim to be a witch. It's kind of, I've likened it to art before. If I went to art school, and it was, if the intention behind the art is art, it's art. Now, it may not be good art, maybe kind of shitty art, maybe problematic art, but it is in the intention. And so if your intention is to be a witch, if you claim to be a witch, no one can really tell you otherwise. And so isn't that very freeing, very liberating in and of that? However, there are reasons why people would like to become a witch. And it is, so I wouldn't say there is a unified prescribed belief system, but there are generalities that people fall into. And then with magic, oh my goodness. Let's start with witchcraft, and then we'll get into magic. But I'll kind of qualify that by saying that witches practice magic. Not all witches practice magic. Some magicians are witches. Not all magicians identify as a witch. So clear that up. Just kidding. So when it comes to magic and witchcraft, I would think that kind of something that most people who fall into these categories are looking for some kind of connection beyond the mundane. So when I say the mundane, I just mean our everyday world, I guess the muggle world, and a belief that there's something beyond the conventional or the mundane. And yeah, some people find that in religion, and that's definitely valid. And I think so that would kind of be maybe the next step, is that people have explored religion and we're looking for something beyond that. Because here's the thing, there's lots of Christian witches, and I feel like Jewish culture is very entwined with mysticism. So they kind of have that inherent mysticism weaved into their belief practice. Yeah, so you can be religious and also be a witch and also practice magic. And in fact, a lot of religions do. And so, yeah, I kind of love the nebulousness of it all, because I believe that we are recognizing that we've been bamboozled to think that our as people, not just our spirituality, but as people, we must fit into these neat little boxes, and there's one prescription for everyone and one system, and that's so problematic. And as I record this in 2026, I believe it's one of the new paradigm shifts that we're moving through, which is this recognition of the individual. Not from a me versus you, I don't care about the collective, but recognizing how being individuals actually feed a collective and isn't necessary for a collective. So yes, so I believe that most people who would identify as, practicing magic or being a witch is like, there's something more than this: going to the job, watching TV, being born, dying, having no control over things, a sense of fatalism, I guess, in some sense. So, or just, non-influence in the world. And so we're like, okay, there's something different that I need to explore beyond what I've been limited to and what I've been taught up to this point. And I think that's where a lot of people awaken to magic or witchcraft, if they were not raised within it, because obviously there is cultural witchcraft, where it's passed down from generation to generation. Those are initiatory. That is not what I'm talking about here. I'm not a lineage witch that was initiated at birth into to any cultural witchcraft. So let's just say that there are absolutely many regions in the world where that is very typical. So not my experience, not what I'm going to be talking to. So, and what's cool is that a lot of people have been raised by like witchy or magical parents, and I was not. So I didn't start really exploring this until, I was raised Catholic, even went to Jesuit school, all of that. I would not say my family is very religious, though. They don't go to church or anything, but it was more like, it was a cultural thing. Funny enough, that, well, we identify as this, almost like we identify, that is our culture, Catholic. And so I don't have a lot of the religious trauma that a lot of people bring to some of these practices, which is, thanks mom, thanks dad. And so, and then there was a void where I didn't really believe anything. I didn't really think about spirituality, which is wild, knowing like how important it is to my life now and how prominent it is and actually in my astrological chart. But here we are. So I had to find it on my own. And that's I think we reach a moment in our life where we say, what, there's got something more than this. And that's what happened to me. And so I started exploring the magic and the witchcraft, and it was all very confusing to me too, because I was like, well, I need the container. Tell me what I believe. No, that's why I love magic and witchcraft. Don't tell me what to believe. But that was very foreign at the time. And I actually believe, so within witchcraft, obviously there's religion, which within being Wicca, the main one. So yeah, Wicca is a religion within witchcraft, meaning that there's a unified belief system. There is an initiation. There are local covens that you can initiate into and work your way up to priestess, all that kind of stuff. I've never been initiated into a Wiccan coven, so that's kind of that's kind of my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I know it's more than that. But magic, there's also sects of magic. So there's, the Golden Dawn is a very well-known magical sect. There's Thelema. There is, yeah. So and then there's practices within, right? So within magic, there's chaos magic. That's not necessarily an organized sect that requires any kind of initiation, but it is, this is a belief of how we can practice magic that's open sourced. And then in witchcraft, yeah, there's going to be, in the same way, people who are say herbologists or people who are tarot readers or diviners, seers, people who are and then this is where it can kind of be shamanic. This is where this is where labels can kind of get confusing, because are all shamans witches? Not if they don't identify, not if they're not claiming that this is art, However, witchcraft does really have a lot of shamanic practices within it. So, have I made anything more clear? Probably not at this point, but here we are. We're going to keep going, because I just wanted to lay that groundwork to say, this is kind of where we're coming into it. And I am not any kind of initiate into anything, though I have dabbled. I have been initiated into mystery school, which I was ultimately not a big fan of, to be honest. And that was just to reaffirm that I'm not an initiatory girly. Like, I want to believe what I want to believe, and I want to practice how I want to practice. And that's why, as an aside, esoeroticism is rooted in magic, not in science. And that probably blows a lot of people's mind. And a lot of people would just dismiss, oh my gosh, the validity of a practice not rooted in science. I'm not anti-science. I love science. Don't put me in that category, wink. I'm definitely pro-science. However, I teach dance. I teach the dark feminine. Esoeroticism is a transformational process, but from a very internal, feminine, spiritual, erotic perspective. To me, magic is the companion for that. And so all of my wisdom from transformation in this work actually is rooted in magic. So magic and witchcraft, let's talk about that. So my best way to kind of say what's the difference between magic and witchcraft. Magic is rooted in I would say the magnum opus is a very kind of common theme that is the ultimate purpose of ceremonial magical traditions. It is the great work. What is the great work? That is to essentially know thyself, to recognize where you have been maybe influenced or out of alignment in this world, to burn that away, to resurrect, and to connect with divinity. It's kind of in magic, in ceremonial magic, the magic is always within you, and you learn techniques to access that source of energy and that sacred divine connection through yourself. Okay, now does it mean they don't use tools? Absolutely not. So many magicians use tarot. So many of them use things like crystals. So this is where it's like gets mishy-mashy, right? But ultimately in magic, what I love about magic is how it is rooted in learning to know thyself, understand yourself at a deep level, and how that connects you to a divine power. And of course, they also work with things like I would say the spirit connection in magic is more ethereal. So think, yes, like angels, demons, a little more rooted in religion, actually. And so I don't want to say that they don't use any tools, but in magic, it is ultimately you are kind of the vessel. And there is a greater purpose of sacred connection, divine connection, yeah. Now, do people use it for other purposes? Absolutely. But that's kind of the essence. Whereas in witchcraft, there is a pretty big connection to animism. So the idea that everything has a unique spirit. So we work with the herb rosemary, because rosemary has an essence to it, a spirit to it. It's not an animism. Everything has a spirit. Everything has an energy. It's not just humans, where that's why there's that's the connection to shamanism, right? So yeah, and what I love about witchcraft is that it moves you kind of beyond yourself a little bit, and it connects you to the world around you. So there is, and I'm not saying that this is only in witchcraft or only in magic. I don't want to be annoying, but I want to keep restating that these are intertwined. There's threads that weave between the two. But generally speaking. In witchcraft, there is a lot of connecting with energies in the world around us. So think about, well, let's talk about how kind of witches came to be, because this is another thing. Here's a tangent I'm about to go on, which is why it's called Rambles and Musings, is I I don't know if people understand that witches were not just like people who chose to live in cute cottages back in the day. And like that, oh, the witch was like the lady who was like had this cute cottage core lifestyle, and like people would go to her for like some herbal remedies or whatever. No, that is not how the wild witch in the forest came to be. The wild witch in the forest came to be because she because of politics and humanity was not allowed to own property. And so if there was a woman and her husband died, or she never got married, she couldn't own a home. So when her husband died, someone would take over the home and she had to retreat to the forest and fend for herself. It's based in economics. It's based in politics. So whenever people are like, oh, don't bring politics or anything like that into witchcraft, I'm like, well, I don't know if you understand inherently that witchcraft is rooted in inequity and in injustice, specifically as it pertains to the feminine. It was based on the fact that we needed to learn to survive and connect with the natural world, because we had to, that's where we were relegated to. That's where we were forced to go when our property was taken from us, or when your male father or whatever died and you couldn't keep the house. Isn't that wild? And so that's something that I like to keep as a reminder. I do think witchcraft is more political than magic in a way, because it's rooted in it. Whereas a lot of magic, I do think, is kind of okay, like spirit, me. I don't know. Witchcraft feels more like we, which is why I love both, because I don't want to just concern myself with one or the other. Like, we are holistic humans. We have to concern ourselves with ourselves, but also with the world around us. And so, yeah, so with witchcraft, you can think about things that are, they say like the earliest witches, people accused of witchcraft during the witch trials, were doulas, people who could help women give birth again. So it is really rooted in the feminine. Not to say that there are not, now we're past a binary system, right? But speaking very simply back then. So consider this idea that a lot of us would not have identified as witches, of what we would qualify as like, oh, that's witchy. No, that was just survival. And that was just living in the natural world before things like capitalism came in and things and stripped us from our connection to the world around us, the natural world. Some people were just like, oh, we heal through medicine, through herbs. We understand how to have an ancestor connection. We understand how to communicate and have relationship with the animals around us. We work with the earth, with the elements, with yeah, this natural animistic world. And it evolved into different practices, different sects and cultures arise within it. But it's also important to remember, a lot of people who we would say, oh, those were witches, would not identify as witches, either because the term didn't exist yet, or because, think about like folk magic. So here, it's interesting, because I would say folk magic is witchy. And by folk magic, I mean the things your grandma does that seem pretty witchy, and that you could never call your grandmama a witch. It's like, no, I just put the red thread on the forehead, or I just use the olive oil to get rid of the malocchio, but don't call me a witch. I'm a Catholic. So folk magic are traditions rooted in more, say, magical, shamanic, animistic, cultural practices that went from generation to generation. And a lot of them have disappeared just because of religion, or things had to go underground. But again, we use the term witch for things that are witchy, and in a lot of cases the people who carry these traditions wouldn't even identify as a witch. So That's interesting. So yeah, I really enjoy magic and witchcraft because I enjoy the autonomy that comes from it. I know that when I started, I was definitely dogmatic. Tell me what to believe. Tell me the spell. Tell me the magical technique. Lay hands on me and heal me. All of those things I think are very beginner level. So yeah, let's shift into this, like the levels of moving through magic and witchcraft, because I have admittedly found myself with huge frustrations with magic and witchcraft in many instances. And so yeah, I think a lot of times we start it and it is for a manifestation purpose. I want this. I'm going to turn to, I mean, this is very cultural too. Like I'm very devout religion, but I go to the the witch to do the money spell for me or to smite my enemy or whatever. That's across cultures, across the world. So it's very interesting, like how people will engage with magic and witchcraft when they don't identify with it, yet they understand that there is something to it that works. And to be really clear, in terms of working with spirits, there are different levels of that. So, in magic, I said angels, demons, that's kind of a very popular spirit connections to make. Whereas in witchcraft, it's a lot of ancestors, or a lot of land spirits, animal spirits, plant spirits, things like that. So you notice the difference. One has a more earthly rooted um, kind of origin, whereas one is a bit more ethereal. And I like working with all of them, and I love not having to choose, and I love being able to explore and say, well, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. But in the beginning, a lot of people will come in and it is because they of manifestation. I want more money, I want my lover to return to me, or I want to find my soulmate, or I want this house or whatever, XYZ. And that's cool because these practices can absolutely work for that. But I know that, and I absolutely did that. Like I was doing the road opener spells and the money spells and the love spells and and the meditations and the visualizations and the calling upon angels and all that for my kind of self-serving egoic purposes. And there's nothing wrong with that, because hello, we live here on earth and we might as well use play the hand you're dealt, right? And spirit and our spirituality can help with that. But I do think there gets to a point where that gets boring, or you realize that there's something deeper that we don't there's no spiritual practice that allows you to control the fucking world around you. We don't have control over how other people, like there is free will. I believe that we all have free will, meaning we can create our life. Hello, that's why in eroticism I always say become the ultimate creatrix of your life, and that comes from reclaiming your body and your sexuality, and you're connected to that, your power, your potential. And so I believe that we have this ability to create a life that is something we dream of. However, I realize that a lot of times that we are pursuing things that are completely out of alignment with who we actually are. And we're always going to struggle because we're not pursuing things in the right way. So let's use an example. And this is going to return to the know thyself. And this is what I really love about magic and witchcraft. And I didn't even mention astrology yet because I think that it spans the both, the magic and witchcraft. I mean, in high magic astrology, working with planetary energies is that combined with working with elemental energies is like the main part of, or not the main, but I would say the foundation of magic is understanding how to work with elemental energies and planetary energies, and then understanding and see and obviously in witchcraft we love astrology, so but there is a shift that happens when you get to a level on your spiritual path, your witchy and magical path, where you realize, oh, I'm not just working with Venus because I want to be beautiful or because I'm trying to manifest love or money. I'm working with Venus to figure out how that expresses in me uniquely? What do I value? Because Venus is a planet of what we value. And so many times we just are pursuing things or manifesting things or doing spells for things that are like, girl, that's not even you. Like, you don't want a Bugatti. Or like, you don't want this, I'm going to speak so binary and boring, but like, you don't want an alpha male. You've just been conditioned to believe you want an alpha male. You actually want like a poetic non-binary, right? So it's a lot of it is once you get to a certain point and you're like doing spells and you're realizing, okay, a lot of times my spells get stuck because I'm not resonating with that and I'm on the wrong path. It's like doing a spell for a job because you need the money and you like the prestige, but then so the spell gets you the job, but then you lose the job because you're not predisposed for it. It's not something that you're even really care that much about deeply. And so there's that dissonance and it disintegrates. And so yeah, there gets to a point I think in our practices where it's not about like the money jar or, you know, it becomes a bit more, I think, reverent and also self-reflective. I like witchcraft for reverence because that's where I really bring in, you know, I have my ancestor altars that I've been working with for years, and I never really ask anything for them except to protect my family. And I thank them for protecting my family. And that is just like a reverence of like, I know there's energies around me and I know that there's spirits, and I just want to honor them. That's it. And we do that with our land spirits. We do that with, and you know, and in turn, there's like this symbiotic relationship. Okay, they're going to offer protection. And it's just nice. Like, actually, I think I'm filming this on Earth Day. How timely. And so, I mean, it's just nice to have reverence for Earth. You know, it would be really helpful, I think, if that was something that more people believed, because they do not enter the 2026 and political system and capitalism and all of that. But yeah, so there's, I think you get to a point where it's like, okay, I just kind of want to have some reverence now, and also self-reflection. And that's where I think that is more suited towards the magic, where it is like, okay, who the fuck am I? Like, who am I when you strip away the influences of the external world? To me, that's the dark feminine work we do. Um, I've been writing, I just started writing more deeply about this on the Esoteric Dark Feminine Magic Substack. It's a little heady, which is why I also was like, girl, record this in your rantings and musings, because I can get a bit heady with this stuff just because I've also been studying it for a long time, and I am writing a book, and I do really want to root in esoeroticism as like this esoteric magical practice, because it freaking is. But you don't need to understand any of it for it to work, which is pretty cool about magic. But yeah, I believe what I really love about what we do in the multiverse, you know, beyond the movement classes themselves, is when we give space for magic and witchcraft and, you know, mostly magic. I'm just gonna say magic in this instance, to know thyself, to self-discover, to recognize, oh, okay, Saturn is in this house in my chart, and that actually means that I am, it doesn't tell you, but it suggests that you are potentially aligned with this kind of energetic imprint. And you then have the sovereignty reflect and say, oh my gosh, that's why I hate this thing. That's why I love doing this. Oh, okay. It's not predictive. It's a tool to know yourself. And I feel the same way about tarot. I love tarot. And I've been actually thinking about teaching another tarot course soon. So let me know if you're interested. But from the perspective of the dark feminine, not from a tell me what's going to happen fortune telling type of tool, but from a, how do I pull a card and understanding the symbology within it, have the subconscious be able to latch on to a symbol or some kind of visual that will then spark a conscious knowing. To me, tarot is just a connection between the subconscious and conscious through symbolism. And it's when you understand what the cards mean that it can spark more nuanced symbolism. So yeah, so this is all over the place, and we're still going to go with it. So for me, I think there's a, you kind of, some, a lot of times I would say not, this is everyone, I would say maybe contemporary people who have recently found magic and witchcraft, not necessarily the people that were raised in it. That's a big caveat, because I always want to respect, you know, lineage and all that. But I think that there is a really easy pathway into magic and witchcraft from okay, I want to manifest something. I feel limited in the mundane. How do I work with this magic thing to get what I want? And then I think there comes a point where it's like, yeah, that's kind of base, as they say. Now I'm understanding the greater magic is actually not in manifesting, it's in knowing yourself. And it's understanding also the connection with the world around you, how to connect with the energies in the world and the spirits in a symbiotic sense, not in a do this task for me sense. And that's definitely where I find myself. And truly, I said I would speak gripes, and I'm going to speak gripes. I'm tired of consumer witchcraft. A lot of people identifying as witches and having bought all of, they have the pentagram necklace and they have all the crystals and they do all the candles, but they're not doing anything to change their lives, meaning they're not doing the self-reflection to really understand their connection to the world around them and their personal power of being able to do certain works. This is why I'm always going to be about somatic work, because man, if you can't control your meat suit and if you can't work with your meat suit and fully own it autonomously and then understand how to energetically use it as your biggest tool, you are such at a deficit in magic and witchcraft. And I think that there's a lot of people, and I'm going to say this in magic too, who conceptualize magic but do not embody magic. There's some magic I think tends to be a little more masculine, witchcraft a little more feminine, which makes sense with kind of how we've been describing it. But I think there's a lot of people who in magic. So, okay, my gripe with with witchcraft is it's become into a consumerism. It's become to like, oh, I love cottage core cuteness, but then they're not recognizing that the roots in it is a lot more political, and that it's not just a form of escapism. It's a form of being entwined with the world and having self responsibility. And it's not just something you can buy, it's something you must embody in how you treat your neighbors, how you treat the world, how you what you cultivate within yourself. That's where the magic always has been. So getting then to magic, there's a lot in the magical world of people who can nerd the fuck out. They can geek out. They can tell you this demon and this angel and do this ritual and this ceremony, and they have all the athames and the robes and all of that. But again, they don't apply it. And what's the fucking point so what's the point of having all the objects, and what's the point of having all the information if you don't embody it? And so I would love to be a voice in two things. One is embodied magic and witchcraft. How do you bring it into the body, and not just, yes, through dance and movement and somatic practices? That to me, especially y'all, 2026 moving forward, especially we got this Uranus going into Gemini. We have a lot of kind of crazy disruptions and unexpected progress and innovation in Gemini, the mind, the air. Oh my goodness, get in your damn bodies. It has been the biggest magic for me, is being able to root in my body, not just for nervous system regulation, but I do energy work in my dance and movement at this point. And I actually just created a new class. I'm calling it Esoteric Conjure now, but I do all of this stuff in the multiverse. I do a lot of let's try this. I'm teaching it tonight. I'm very excited. But it is a movement meditation where we do energy work in our movement. And yeah, I'm excited for that because I've been doing it myself. And so I was like, let me see if I can guide other people through it. So that's kind of when you get beyond like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm learning dance to be able to perform and to be able to learn these moves, and then it like feels good, and then like it's levels, and then you get to the point, okay, like I don't need the external validation, I don't really care, I got my foundations, I don't need a greater tool belt of moves. Now I want to go deeper within it. Okay, now I'm like, then you get into like the reclamation of the body and the sexual sovereignty, and then you can get to the point where it's like, oh, this is my tool for energy work. All of my best ideas come from my dance when I'm in like these meditative states in my dance and my movement. and all of a sudden these knowings drop in, and I feel like extremely calibrated. It's pretty amazing. So I don't remember how we got down that path. So the embodiment. So what's the point of knowing all of this information if you're not going to apply it? Oh, I was saying it's not just in the dance and the movement. Yeah. So beyond that, it's in like, yeah, how do you show up in the world? How do you treat people at the grocery store? How do you treat, how do you treat other humans? How do you treat animals? How do you treat the land? How do you make choices for yourself that are empowering versus disempowering? How are you feeding into problematic systems versus being, maybe complicit versus being, but not being a martyr? Like, how do we strip our ego from it? It's so deep. There is no end. There is no end. It is a lifestyle. Magic and witchcraft is a lifestyle. It's a language. It's an art. There is science to it. There's community and connection through it, but it's all beyond the mundane, I would say, with both. That's how they both kind of appeal to me, that they are beyond the mundane and they bring you beyond this mundane reality of control and manipulation. And that's my issue with dogma, even within magic, even within witchcraft, is because I want to explore. There's eclectic witchcraft, there's also chaos magic. I like both of them, and they are both very much non-dogmatic techniques. I'm not going to talk about or teach them to you all today, but yeah, if you're interested, look into eclectic witchcraft, look into chaos magic. There are also chaos witches, which is pretty cool. They are witches who are rooted in chaos magic, which I think I may be, but not all eclectic witches are chaos magicians. So this is kind of now I'm just confusing people, but those are two different I would say practices, one in witchcraft, one in magic, that is very self-sourced, is very much like you decide. You get to decide what you want to practice, what doesn't resonate, and it's rooted in you being the authority. And the only way you can be the authority is if you do it, because what works for me may not work for you. This spell, I love the example. This was really eye-opening for me when I started doing magic and witchcraft. Was someone said, okay, well, I don't have an orange for this spell, so I can't do it. And someone said, well, understand the essence of orange. What is it about orange that it's being used in the spell? Because here's the thing, the person who made that spell wasn't like some divine god on a mountain. It was probably someone who just lived in Florida and had a lot of oranges, and that suited their purpose. Oh my gosh, speaking of God on mountains, I didn't even get to deities. Okay. I do not work with deities. I know, gasp. I really enjoy learning about goddesses and gods and all of that. In terms of archetypal energies, I love the storytelling and the mythology. And I think there's a lot of wisdom and metaphor and richness in those. I have never really been oh gosh, you're going to come at me again. Let me just tell you all the ways you can cancel me. I have a really hard time keeping plants alive, even though I really want to be a green witch. And I'm not super into mythology. I know, crucify me, but it's a little confusing for me, but I like it, individual stories within mythology, but I couldn't tell you the full pantheon. But oh my gosh, I remember during the pandemic, in the multiverse, we read Circe, and that was so good. So I love learning about Hecate. I love learning about Medusa and Lilith. And, we're doing in actually the multiverse right now, one of our instructors, Allie, is a priestess of Sekhmet and is leading us through the 6 symbols of Sekhmet. And that's so cool. Like, I love these things. And a lot of people in magic or in witchcraft will have patron deities or goddesses or certain spirits, let's say, that they work with. And I don't have, there's been times where I've had a Venus altar, where I've had a Lakshmi altar, where, but I've just never resonated with me. It can resonate with you. That's the thing. I don't get to determine your practice sovereignty. So yeah, how long have we been talking? Oh my God, I can't believe I've been talking for 40 minutes. Crimson, if you listened this long, bless you, child. I always resisted doing these because I just don't want to sit and organize a full podcast and then just to talk and have to try to hit all of the points. And so I didn't think I would be able to talk to myself for this long. But speaking of astrology, my Venus, what we value, is in Gemini. So talking, just conversing. And also something that I think I share that I drop that in every now and then, but it's also in the ninth house, which is of like higher education and teaching. So I will always love teaching through talking, which balances very nice with the embodied esoeroticism, because I don't want to just live in the head. And I think that's why I really value esoeroticism and embodiment, is because I do have a predisposition to being in the head and through leading through information, but it's not about the information. I just hope this was like a fun chat for you while you were like driving or doing the dishes or something like that, and it awoken something within you. But the ultimate purpose is for you to go embody something. Don't just take in information. What are you going to do with it? And that's been my fun challenge as I'm writing the book on esoeroticism right now, is really like, how am I taking this information, but I'm weaving it into an actual embodiment practice so it doesn't just remain in the head. So that was fun. I'm sure there's a lot I didn't cover. Like I said, there are dissertations on this, and I am by no means a doctor of witchcraft or of magic. But hopefully this also, if anyone's listening and felt like I can't identify as this or I need some kind of initiation, no, just start. The only way to know what works for you is to start playing. And if anyone makes you feel like, well, you can't do tarot if you don't know all of the Hebrew symbols and you don't know it all, like, we all have to start somewhere. Maybe don't charge people for readings, you know what I mean? But we all have to start somewhere and start dabbling and understand some things you learn are just going to not work for you. It's not going to be your thing, and that's okay. This is sovereignty, and this is the new paradigm we're building, which is us not being told who we are, but us remembering who we are. That was poetic. I'm going to leave it on that. Thank you so much for watching. Stay in your magic. And I'm trying to think, do I have anything? Yeah, get on their Magick and Musings newsletter list if you're not already. We have a retreat in June, mid to end June here in North Carolina, Sovereign Sensualist. It's just a weekend. It's going to be amazing. Would love to have you join that. And next podcast, we'll be back with Tara for the May astrology. All right, I'll shut up now. Bye. Thank you for joining. Follow me on Instagram at crimson.minx and visit esoerotic.com to learn to live more fully and unapologetically in your magnetic power, sensual pleasure, and unlimited creative potential.